Hey, B30. So we had our first Google Meet. So that was a learning experience for me. I've never used Google Meet, but it seemed to go fairly well. And I thank you to the 4 individuals that were with me for the 2 hours and 10 minutes. And so we managed to get chapter 5 and 6 read aloud. And then we did the chapter 5 and 6 summaries and discussed the key points there. So I encourage all of you to be there tomorrow. And if you can't, then be sure you're doing the check-in as you did today. Thank you for doing that. And so that at least in one form shows me that you have been reading the posts. And so the other form of attendance that I'll be keeping will be the number of views that I see through YouTube. And that will also provide me some feedback on whether the videos are actually serving its purpose and helping you out. And if the views are as high as I am anticipating they will be, then we will have the that'll help me with my decision on whether to continue having videos for my Quint 3, 4, and 5 grade 12 classes. So so your feedback is important, and so please pass on anything that I could be doing better in that regard. But I do hope that you will be a part of the Google Meet at some point in the final, well, now 10 days since we got our first class out of the way, but we have 10 more classes to go until the end of the Quint. So I'm hoping you'll be a part of those meets as we progress further. And I mentioned in my comments on Google Classroom about the resubmit of papers. So take a look at your papers again and be sure that you have those in-text citations. I am noticing those who have already submitted their papers do not have in-text citations. The paper is written fairly well, but it's important to have those in-text citations to show yes, you have validated or used references in the paper, but they're not cited. So the in-text citation is important, and that should match up with what you have in your works cited. So be sure that you have that information before I finalize marks. I just, for the number of students that I have, it's 40, almost 50 students, and they all have papers and other assignments. For me to take pictures of everything and then pass it on to you, that'd be difficult to do for everybody. So I'm thinking that if at least we already know we have to proofread and all that jazz, but at least ensure that you have your in-text citations and your works cited page along with your header and footer, header and your title as well. You know, those features, and you're able to expand, have the basic format of a research paper, the 5 paragraphs, but expanding on it accordingly. If you're able to show that, then I can at least justify a half marks back in that regard, because you did a resubmit just to ensure that you've covered all your bases. So I think under the circumstances that we have right now, with the fact that we're online and communications not going to be as easy as it would be if we were in person. I'm thinking if you take that initiative on by a resubmit, checking it over to ensure that you have those key components of the paper, then I can justify whatever your mark is, I can justify half marks there, and then finalize it accordingly. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. Don't forget, Cola Conquest is due on Friday, and that's the questions and your ad or commercial and submit that to Google Classroom. Commercials would be difficult to email unless you just email me the link to your location of where that video is, and we can go from there. And also keep in mind TED Talks. You can do that anytime between now and December 16th. And and just take a look at the video I did yesterday that speaks about that. And you can even look back at some of my other playlists that I have and look for the TED Talk for June of last year and for the B30 course. And you could take a look at that, the TED Talk video I did, just to give you an idea of how you could do a TED Talk through video recording. And if you would like to do it through Google Meet, which I do encourage you to conquer those fears, it would be, you know, we're on a digital platform. You are in the comfort of your own home. So at least you have that. You should be able to do your TED Talk in front of your peers. For sure, all TED Talks will be done on December 16th and 17th. But if we can get everybody done by the 16th, then that gives me a little more time to finalize the marks, and then you can be up to date right sooner than later. Okay, so if that makes sense to everybody there. So let's get into chapter 5 and 6. And you can press pause at any time. So I'm not going to go into great detail as I did with the course or those who are in the Google Meet, but I will highlight some key points here. Chapter 5 is loyalties, questions, conflicted beliefs and values, coercion and force, and the fear factoring. I talked about that in the previous video. And so we have loyalties question when Molly is questioned on the spot whether she was loyal to animalism and of course Animal Farm, and which is very common, or it was a common scene in Soviet Russia with communism, everybody questioning their loyalties to the governing body and the beliefs and values of the time. And of course, if you want to, you know, keep your standing in society, you would comply and go along with what is being whatever the status quo is at the time. But secretly, you probably have differing beliefs and values, and so you'd have to keep that part of your life secret. And but if it got out, especially with KGB and other secret groups or secret military groups or police groups, if they found out that you were going against the government, then you could be jailed, you could be maybe lose your status in society, or you could be killed. That'd be the extreme, but that's what happened back then. We've seen some signs of people's loyalties being tested in even in our democratic societies as well. So it's important that you you're aware of what's going on in the world, the political standoffs, the divisiveness that's going on there, and even the testing of loyalties too, in regards to how we're dealing with the issues that we're facing in our world today. We had decisions made through policy, and then of course it'd be voted on, and then it'd be ratified. It's very similar to the democratic process that we're familiar with in Parliament. Somebody presents a bill, and so then they discuss it, and then they vote on it, and then it goes up to the upper chamber and is ratified and becomes law. Okay. United States, they made a bill as presented. Congress would discuss it and then vote on it. Then it would be ratified in the Senate, and of course then it would become law if it's passed. So Adolf Hitler did this in his early days as he slowly gained more control over the country before finally going full out and leading to World War II. We had Snowball on one side of the coin, Napoleon on the other side of the coin, and so we have conflicts or conflictions of beliefs and values. So I mentioned in today's class that it was like watching a tennis match. So if you watch the audience at a tennis match, the heads go, you know, as the ball gets hit back and forth. And so if you can visualize Snowball and Napoleon playing tennis, Snowball would say something, Napoleon would say something. Snowball and the animals are going back and forth, so their loyalties are divided. And then the sheep, we have the 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, continually being repeated over and over again, and it's a way to drown out and basically take the air out of the balloon to those who are, if it looks like the support is swaying to one side, there would be a group of people that would be chanting some propaganda and to drown them out, and so that the only person that could be heard would be the one that's coercing or trying to get power, force change, things like that. Next one is, so we have Snowball is making his case for the windmill, and of course Napoleon sees the wind blowing in his direction, and so he doesn't like that, so he squeals, and all of a sudden these 9 dogs come pouncing in, and so those are those 9 puppies that were taken away, and Napoleon was educating them. And so historical reference, we had the exile of Trotsky, bringing in Stalin to power in Soviet Russia. We've seen other cases where popular leaders have been kicked out in place of another leader, and the leader that's been kicked out, or the person that's been kicked out, is more popular than the one that's currently in charge. That sounds familiar even today. So it's interesting what's happening in this novel is relevant to what's going on in our world today. So history repeats itself. And our third screen here, the big one here is the wide use of propaganda, the repetition of it, the constant reminder about whether, you know, if you don't follow what we're doing, Jones is going to come back. So we have that fear factoring taking place as well. And if you are, all, you know, people say, if you don't do this, this is going to happen, and then that fear kicks in, that's going to control any and take over any decision you're going to make, and pretty soon you'll be silent. So propaganda kills the dissenters, anybody that's against the movement that's taking place at that time. We have maxim number 4. Napoleon's always right. So now Boxer has 2 of them. I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right. And then we find out that the windmill idea was Napoleon's idea all along, because he had it written down and all that kind of stuff. But the animals don't know how to write. They don't know how to read, for that matter. But the animals believe Squealer's explanation of tactics. And so he's able to spin it. And as long as the animals keep buying into it, well, then any questions that they do have or doubts gets tossed to the wayside here. So if you don't question anything, if you don't inquire or validate, then and you take things as they are, you can't have any. There's never going to be change. There's never going to. You're still going to have divisiveness, and we're only going to see the surface. We're not going to see what's below the surface. And I talked about that iceberg reference yesterday. All we see is the top of the iceberg, but there's more to the iceberg below the surface. And if we put ourselves in that, we only see the what we want to show society, but there's more to our character and our person if we are willing to conquer those fears and let people know this is who we are, right? This is who I am, and you know, this is what I believe in. These are my values and things like that. And you stand your ground by maintaining those. And of course, you would pass it on to your next generation and so on and so forth. In chapter 6, we have redefinition of freedom, because I did have that question earlier. What's your definition of freedom, and how far would you go to fight for freedom? We had trade with the enemy, which was a contradiction to what Old Major and Snowball were promoting. Amendments to the commandments and scapegoating, placing blame on somebody else, because you know you're at fault, but you don't want them to find out, so you put blame on somebody else, and then you spin it to make it sound valid. And so again, that's Squealer's job of spinning things. Sounds very familiar of Polonius kind of spinning things so that he can have control over Laertes and of course what happens in the castle and so on and so forth. We have trade with the humans, very similar to the Soviet-Nazi non-aggression pact. But if you know your history 20, that pact went out the window when Hitler decided to expand his territory. And then Stalin said, that's not going to happen. And he joins the Allies. And of course, the whole war shifts to the Allies. And of course, they win World War II. And then the war is over. What else on this? Well, we have our first commandment amended, so take note of that, and it's in italics in the text. So anything that's in italics, we know that's emphasis. So be sure that you pay attention to that. And because nobody's paying attention to the commandments, came close, but as you know, if it's written there and nobody questions it, then you're going to say, oh yeah, well that must have been like that from day one. But all it takes is one little change, even if in a couple words or whatever, and pretty soon you have a whole new definition of or representation of law, or the procedures and how things take place in our world, that kind of thing. It just takes one minor change, and if you're not paying attention, you know, probably a good example would be those user agreements that pops up every once in a while. They're going to make a change to the user agreement, and you know, probably 99% of the time we don't read those user agreements. We just say I agree right off the bat, because there's a lot there. But in recent weeks, I've been actually reading not every single thing, but some of the key changes. And so it's especially if you're, you know, with a bank, or, you know, how they do the interest rates for loans and stuff like that. You know, that could affect your bottom line, and you could be paying more in interest than what you initially agreed. And all they have to do is change one word for another word. And if you see that, that's something to kind of, the alarm bell should go off, right? And so you should inquire as to why they're making those changes. So just an example that seems to fit very well with this amendment of the commandments. And finally, the windmill is half complete. It is destroyed in a storm, but they use this. Napoleon uses this as a means to again scare the animals into saying, you know, if we don't get this windmill built, Jones will come back. But now he has a second person that he can place some blame on and use as a fear, as part of his fear tactics. And he uses Snowball. Snowball came in and destroyed the whole windmill. Well, obviously we know that's not the case, and there's no way that one pig can destroy a massive structure like that. But the animals are none the wiser, and they take Squealer's explanation for it. And the footprints that Napoleon finds in the ground, those are actually snowballs. They were left there from when he was during his expulsion, but the pigs forgot about that, right? It's been a long time, but Napoleon, he's able to manipulate the pigs, the animals, and until they start questioning, until they ask for proof in writing. Well, they're not going to ask for proof because they don't know how to read, but until they start doing that, he can pretty much do what he wants. And we do have that happening in our world today. We've seen it in history as well. As if there's no, and that's why many examples in history where we had a three-class system: upper class, middle class, lower class. As long as you didn't question the upper class, and a lot of lower class citizens didn't go to school, so obviously they were the majority of the population, mind you. They wouldn't push back, they wouldn't question, and so the upper class and middle class were able to do pretty much whatever they wanted to do. And then probably the best example would be the French Revolution, when finally the lower class came together and realized, hey, we can fight this if we all band together. And so they were able to make change. Mind you, they did it 6 times. Liberty, new constitution, okay, and certain freedoms. You know, they basically fought 6 times for the same thing. But at least they came together, and then it stopped. We didn't have the other class fighting for anything because they figured they had it all. And then all the upper class had to do was make a few changes, and then they gained more power that way. And then there was a massive gap from how to do things, and then we go from there. Well, then we have our issues from there. So aside from that, I think that's about it for chapter 6. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully in Google Meet. Take care and be safe.